Hello, everyone, and welcome to this morning's webinar. So, look, today's topic is accountability in 2025. And I say it's a current topic, but it's actually a topic that we cover annually from a different angle each time. Because there's no easy fix to accountability. And for some reason, it's always top of mind with the people that we talk to. Accountability is a huge issue at the moment, and that's what we're hearing because there's a real mismatch between what leaders want and what people want. So I think we're at a bit of a crossroads, and so it seemed appropriate to come back to accountability and see what some of the new research was about it. There's a lot of stuff happening which makes our workplaces pretty dynamic at the moment. There's obviously generative AI, there's the democratization of the workforce to more skill-based, there's the generational changes, and I think some of the convergence of all of this is really starting to shift accountability, and we need to be at the forefront of that, or else it's going to reduce our productivity. So I think that lots of folks have now joined, so why don't we kick off with the webinar. My name is Evelyn Muhlenberg, and I am your Learning Ventures host today. I'm a 30-year veteran of the sector, the last 15 years as Managing Director of Learning Ventures. We're about to have our 15th birthday. What I love about our sector and what we're able to do is that we can transform organisations, because people are by far the most wonderful asset that organisations can have, and they can really create huge change in organisations. Finance can ensure sort of compliance and cash flow, but people can really change and transform organisations. So I think it's a pretty exciting field to be in. Karen and I will look after the chat and any incoming questions in the chat bar. By all means, introduce yourselves in there and say hello. It's good to see lots of regulars on there. We have lots of people that attend more than one webinar. Housekeeping, please engage with us, ask questions. We have got a poll, a survey at the end. The webinars are available on demand, and we have a schedule. All of that will come out. But by all means, the first question for the chat, Kiora from Auckland, New Zealand. Welcome, Jenny. And what I thought I would ask today as our opening question was, how do you start your day? So, Jenny, the question to you, as you've been the first one to introduce yourself, how do you start your day? I start my day by walking my two beautiful dogs. I hear you say, aren't they gorgeous? Tex and Nugget, my wonderful pets. The reason why I put this photo up is it's actually an example too of AI. I sent off my two photographs of my pets, well, half a dozen photographs, and they came back with this beautiful picture that they have screen printed by technology onto a canvas, which now I have as a piece of art, my two wonderful dogs. But it demonstrates what AI can do. Michelangelo would have taken probably a year to paint trying to chase my dogs around to sit still. And now a portrait can be created in minutes. So it's an amazing piece of technology which we can add to our workplace, not just to the art on our walls. So welcome, everyone. For regulars, you will know that all our webinars are brought to you by our three strategic pillars. We do like to challenge conventional thinking, and I think I'm going to go out on a limb on this one. In terms of that, leadership really does matter to organisations, and we like to deliver results, and any sort of change program should be delivering results. Today, our webinar is actually brought to you by two pillars. And that is the delivers results pillar, because I think accountability will deliver substantial results in productivity and financial results. Good morning, Kelly. And she started with a gym session. Excellent. It's the way to start. Good way to clear the mind. Welcome, Kelly. I think it's a mix today between delivers results and leadership matters. Because it's actually a struggle that leadership will have in terms of accountability. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the struggle because leadership does matter, but leadership has to shift its thinking in order to adapt to the accountability of today. So it's brought to you by two of our pillars. And let's start talking about what accountability is. And welcome, Ruby. Cuddling your two young daughters in bed. Oh, that sounds fantastic. Welcome aboard. Look, I mentioned earlier that there's a couple of dramatic shifts that are happening to our workplaces, and they're clashing. I call it clashing because there's so much going on that it's really hard to keep accountability in an even keel. There is generative AI and all of the AI tools that are coming. There is the skill-based organisation, and there is the fact that our Gen Ys and Z are starting to take over a substantial amount of our workplace. This convergence is actually going to shift accountability from leaders to individuals, and that's a huge shift. Accountability itself is the acceptance of responsibility for one's own actions. So it implies a willingness to be transparent, allow others to observe us, to evaluate our performance. And in any organisation, everyone needs to be responsible. Yet when we talk with clients and potential clients, the most common pain point that they talk about still today is accountability for performance. And interesting that is both down in the hierarchy when you talk to the people that are in some of our programs, and it's also then in the middle managers. They all talk about accountability and they all like to blame everyone else's issue. I'm shocked really at how many organisations do not have sufficient trust in the organisation to allow for transparent and helpful 360 feedback. And it's just ridiculous. We've been working on transparency and open feedback in organisations for over 40 years. How can we get it always so wrong in there? It's just crazy. So look, let's start with a poll. Thank you, Karen. If you want to pop that up for everyone to have an answer of. So how would you rate accountability in your organisation? Great. Yep, you're up there. Needs work. Yes, that's about a 60 to 80. Change is really starting to make things hard. And I think that's where I would expect lots of people to be. It's a struggle is down there. And then God bless, the only way is up for those that are really struggling with accountability. And we've got some that are in that category as well. So I'll let you keep answering. I think it's an interesting exercise. And it looks like most of you are still answering. Some people still vacillating about whether it's a 60 or a 40 or thereabouts. Look, I think we've got between 40 and 80%, which is that whole middle of the bell curve mostly. Let me end the poll there and share the results with you. What you will see is that accountability is definitely still an issue in organisations. And welcome to our webinar. We are talking about something that's topical for all of you. So look, thank you very much for answering the webinar. Let's talk about some solutions. I think that it's this clash at this stage in terms of what's changing in our world, which is really starting to cause some impact on our accountability. What I love, I don't know if any of you have heard of Rethink X, look it up. It's a think tank and it's got some pretty radical ideas that challenge our thinking about, they've got 5 topics, but it's transportation, energy, food supply. But they also talk about the transition of our world to new workplaces. And I think it's quite refreshing. One of their original papers was about the simple iPhone or smartphone and what that meant in terms of the convergence of batteries, processors, displays, and artificial intelligence. Yes, 20 years ago, they had AI. but how it transformed everything that we do. And that is dating, transportation, eating, food delivery, just about everything that we as humans access has been transformed by the smartphone. And that has been in less than 20 years. So if we think about the speed with which technology is changing, the next generation of technology, which is around generative and artificial intelligence and robots, that's going to change our world and workplaces in less than maybe the next 10 years. That's not a lot of time for these enormous shifts to be happening. So first, we're going to look at some of the impacts of these changes on our workplace. We're going to look at three things in particular, and I'll get to them next. But we're also going to look at the shift in accountability from what I class as push to more pull. It's going to go from leader to individual. And then some tips at the end in how we can, you can get started in this new equation. So look, what's changing in our world? All right. Y is in charge. Y and Z are now over 50% of our workplaces. And we do have X and Ys in leadership position. Of course, there are boomers as well. But they're slowly moving out of senior leadership positions. So most leadership positions are held by X and Y at the moment. And the younger generations actually are very clear in most engagement surveys that they prefer collaborative, agile, flexible workplaces, and that they prefer to be in control of some of the work and some of the narrative. They value feedback, real-time feedback. They value peer accountability and that collaborative nature. And they value being able to make contributions based on their skills. They do not value having to wait in the hierarchy to get where they need to go. Gallup has done a number of research projects which show that the younger generations are more likely to change their jobs more frequently when they feel that they're being overlooked and that they are not getting the skill development or recognition that they feel they need. And I actually read a LinkedIn article yesterday called the Career Development Champion as a team member. And it's the team member that everyone wants because their productivity is more than 10 to 20% greater than everyone else's. And if you look at the very words, Career Development Champion, it means that we need to develop these people constantly. They're our talent of the future. And a great example of this development is of how we let graduates and our Gen Zs down was an exercise I conducted actually a few years ago. We developed a self-leadership program called Heart Leader for Generation Y and Z leaders. And it was particularly targeted on graduates within 1 to 2 years of their graduate program. So they complete their 12 months in their graduate program, and in their second or third year, they would get this individual leadership program. And I met with over 30 organisations to see what their graduate development journeys included and whether they would like to add leadership skills onto their graduate journey. Only 2 of 30 organisations I met with were prepared to add leadership development, even self-leadership, to their graduate programs. Most of them said, no, they're not ready, not ready, not ready. It's interesting, most of those 28 companies also suggested that they had 25 to 50% turnover of graduates in their first 2 years, with a cost of a graduate program at the time of between $5,000 and $10,000 per graduate, and the cost of turnover of a graduate as 1 year's salary about $70,000. We're talking about $100,000 per graduate for turnover. For one IT company that I chatted to who hires 200 graduates, they lost 100 in their first 24 months. So they lost 50% of all of their graduates. That's a $10 million loss to the business. And interesting, of the 2 companies that put in the leadership development, they had no turnover. So the fact is, whilst that's a very small sample size, the fact is these career development champions and these early emerging leaders want leadership development. They want development. They don't want to be told, no, there's a ceiling to them. It's a no-brainer to give them development when you look at the costs of the turnover. It's just too expensive. Next, Gen Zs also prefer short-term performance metrics, collaborative project-based accountability rather than one-on-one goals and metrics. And they actually rail against traditional and rigid performance management systems because they feel that they're able to contribute more than just that narrow sphere. They expect work-life balance. They expect flexible work conditions. They expect flexible workplaces. All of these things we know that they expect. One of my clients has invited recently everyone back into the office. In fact, they've demanded everyone back in the office. And I had a robust conversation with them the other day that I said, this isn't going to work. The horse is already bolted on flexible work, and you need to make it work for the organisation or you'll just lose your talent. And interesting that, well, to me, the Fair Work Commission has actually, the Fair Work Commission in Australia has actually just awarded against an organisation bringing somebody back into the office unless they were able, because they felt they were not able to prove by metrics that that person's productivity was impacted when they were at home. So to qualify, that is not everyone, but they did talk in that commission hearing about parents and carers, yes, and the Fair Work judgment applied. So most organisations don't actually have those productivity measures. So unless they do, forcing workers to return is just unjust. So all this aside, as the workplace demographics evolve and the old-fashioned boomers and X generations who thrived on a much more rigid and repeatable organisation structures, if they move on, our accountability structures are going to need to change in order to maintain efficiency, fairness, and engagement. So that's the key first pressure. Number two, welcome to your new team member. That same talent program I was talking about earlier, I was at a dinner and there were two people opposite me who were having a conversation about generative AI. One was a senior leader who had never used generative AI or anything to do with AI. He was in conversation with one of the talent participants who was enthusiastically talking about how Premium ChatGPT had changed his life by developing new procedures in the health and safety area, had easily customized a full manual in minutes rather than taking hours. And the senior executive's eyes were just sort of widening. And he suggested, oh, maybe I need to learn something about it. We all need to cut to the chase and use it. Just use it. AI tools are here. They are becoming and improving beyond our imagination, and they are transforming accountability because they are taking away repeatable administrative tasks, which allows us to focus on other things. And they're also improving transparency. Analytics at the moment, you can get analytics that provide real-time tracking of employee performance, project progress, decision-making. This reduces ambiguity in accountability. It makes everything that we do more data-driven. And it can result in improving compliance and risk management, as well as documentation procedures, a whole lot of those sorts of things. It is actually revolutionizing talent acquisition. You can now get a complete screening and a behavioural interview of 5 questions done by text, which will shortlist candidates straight away. Piece of technology, piece of AI that's doing it. You can even use an avatar to interview. These sorts of things are around, and they are going to transform the way we work. Welcome to the power of your new team member. It's going to blur responsibilities. It's going to remove bias. It's going to reduce human error. And I get it that there's, of course, ethical concerns in the early stages, but there's at least 50% of our processes that it can help and reduce the sustainability of our efforts and therefore improve our productivity. Because if we were to win back, let's say 1 day a week, because AI does something for us that used to take a day, what could we do with that day? We could problem solve. We could think strategically. We could spend more time developing relationships, which is what humans are good at, and AI and bots, well, depending on what TV show you watch, are not so good at. You could spend more time with customers. You could spend more time delivering what customers want, whether that's internal or external, clarifying expectations, all of these sorts of things. Leaders that we have in our programs say are their challenges day to day. What if they could do all of those things? It's just going to improve our workplaces and make accountability much easier because we're able to spend our time doing the things we need to do. Number 3, in terms of the challenge, is that the hierarchy is crumbling. Most organisations should be moving in some way, shape or form to skill-based structures. We ran a whole webinar on skill-based organisations at the end of last year. They are more fair and equitable, more agile and more efficient. But I'd say of all of the organisations we speak to, probably less than 20% are actually consciously thinking that that's where they need to move in the next 3 to 5 years, or even in the next year, 12 months or 18 months. The inertia in the hierarchy is immense. And whilst I don't condone, Doge and Elon and what they're doing in the US, but dismantling hierarchies and bureaucracy has to be at the fore of our future. An organisation that is starting to align itself around skills and agile project teams that looks at people's skills rather than a role description, that's going to play to people's strengths. That's going to allow the organisation greater flexibility and agility. That's going to allow cross-functional project teams. It fosters innovation, efficiency, and it actually will reshape how we look at accountability, because accountability then becomes much more of a collective or a collaborative outcome rather than an individual one. Team members then own tasks as part of a broad-based process or project team, and that it allows their strengths to come to the fore and it allows them to make their contribution, but the accountability then becomes the collective result. And surprisingly, in high-performing project teams, there is a lot more peer-to-peer courageous conversations if people aren't making the appropriate effort. And that's something that leaders struggle in most organisations, is the courageous conversation one-on-one. When they're peer-to-peer, there isn't that power imbalance. And so therefore, it's more likely that they're going to, whether in a jovial or a courageous way, say, come on, mate, or whatever, get them moving. Project teams with outcomes more often have very clear metrics. I want a new product development in 10 weeks. I want to roll out this leadership program in 10 weeks, whatever it is. It's an outcome-based and it's collective. There is stronger peer-to-peer accountability in these sorts of teams. Often in these teams, you'll also get greater learning and development, which works towards that career development champion. Team members in collaborative skill-based teams tend to upskill and reskill each other so that they're all able to move forward and be high-performing teams. Everyone then is able to contribute if, say, one person isn't there for a day, or they all work a 4-day week and they juggle that around. It means that everybody's able to do everybody's roles. There's a whole lot more upskilling. I should run a webinar which talks about the hierarchy is dead, but I'm not sure that many CEOs would be very happy with that title anymore, because it actually hangs on to the old framework of power. And the loss of the hierarchy actually democratizes power in organizations. And there is still some shifts in organization that has to happen that will make some people leaders in organizations pretty uncomfortable, prospect of losing some of that power or democratizing. So that's going to be one of the big culture shifts that happens. Okay. So these are the things that are all clashing into our organizations. So what does that mean for accountability? Traditionally, accountability is driven by leaders. Executives set the strategy and the KPIs. These are then cascaded down in the organisation. Leaders, at whatever level they are, they create alignments so that those below them in the hierarchy understand the purpose of the KPI or the goal or the role that they're doing. From there, the expectations are set, and leaders, through goal setting, feedback, and regular check-in conversations, hold people accountable through a performance management system. Now, this still holds true as accountability in probably 80% of the organisations that we see. And when done well, it can actually be good best practice, and it can drive high performance and it can deliver results. The key success for a push strategy in terms of accountability is that you need great leaders to drive the process, and you need great leaders to set the expectations with the people that covers the why, the what, and the how. I don't think many leaders do that well. I think they do the why, maybe. They definitely do the what because they're task focused, but very few do the how or the behavioural expectation. Yet 90% of courageous conversations in organisations are about attitude and behaviour. So if they're not setting the behavioural expectation or goal, they're only setting the task, then no wonder we have this struggle with accountability in those traditional things. So the key success factor is great leaders, and great leaders will be able to deliver that traditional accountability. Nothing wrong with the push strategy, but it actually needs to, it drives accountability from a leader to an individual. The shift away from this push style of accountability started to happen in COVID and remote working because it was extremely difficult to manage people tightly when they were not in the room and not in sight. So many leaders struggled with this shift to more outcomes-driven targets and less day-to-day management of people. But the shift did actually happen. And by and large, productivity hasn't reduced dramatically with remote working. In fact, with the removal of the commute, sometimes productivity has increased. But with the changing tides, Gen Y and Z don't want to be individually told what they need to deliver, whether it's a KPI or an outcome. They want the tide to change and have their goals more collaborative, project-based, team-based, and outcome-based. And when targets are outcome-based, whether as individuals or project teams, the people are able to have much more autonomy about how they reach the target and goal. And this autonomy is much more motivating. When we accelerate the motivation of people, if in their outcomes and if they're collectively set, it is less push from leader in the organisation and more pull from the team or the functional unit or the people that are doing the work. This is where leaders need to move to a much more coaching style of leadership, where the team members are responsible and accountable for not only delivery of the outcome, but often crafting the target as well. These semi-autonomous teams are much more accountable from within and to each other for the outcomes that they deliver. These styles of teams are also more ready to tackle technology and AI. They're just much more willing to adopt new things because they don't have the rigor of a lifetime of inertia in their workplace. They're newer, they're more ready to adapt, and they're more ready to work to their strengths. They upskill each other, they have greater work flexibility, and they have decentralized decision-making, which often is closer to the business or to customers, so it can be quicker and more effective. Coaching leaders allow teams to be autonomous, innovative, and efficient. And that's the real shift in accountability going forward as we start to have these organizations with all these pressures and the change that's coming. We need coaching leaders to allow autonomous individuals and teams to thrive. So leadership needs to move from more push styles of driving accountability to more pull styles of coaching accountability and ownership in their teams. The future will be pull, not push. And the sooner our organisations start to shift that why, what, and how of accountability by coaching, the better they will be at adopting the change and the technology that's heading our way. And when I talk to organisations, those that have totally structured coaching programs, even coaching for accountability programs, is rare. They do a lot of the accountability standard sort of leadership practices. We need to shift our leaders to coaching and quickly so that they can move there. All right, 5 tips. I don't think I've seen any questions. We have. what would this Project and Agile look like in manufacturing teams? Actually, Project and Agile works very, very well. They just take the whole process and work together collectively as a team. I've seen this work in a fast-moving consumer goods, and it was called a semi-autonomous team. They all knew how the various parts of the manufacturing process worked, and they all worked collectively. It works actually quite effectively in most organizations. Thanks, Anna. Okay, 5 tips to go forward. First of all, look, I still see too many organizations that want to control the narrative. They want to control the conversation, control the processes, drive that compliance culture. And these conventional organizations stifle mavericks. There he is, Mr. Maverick. But disruptive organizations actually really embrace them. You've got to identify the mavericks in an organization and within the teams and provide them with the autonomy and the resources to disrupt the status quo. I know that's uncomfortable. These trailblazers will inspire others, and they ignite this culture of ownership and accountability that challenges the ordinary. When we give individuals freedom to make decisions within their sphere of influence and encourage them to take the ownerships, they thrive, and they often demonstrate initiative, creativity, and commitment going through. I have used this photo before in terms of Maverick in another webinar. So I asked ChatGPT whether or not it could suggest another modern example of a disruptor, and they suggested Elon Musk. Now, I wasn't going to use a photo of Elon, considering the kind of kerfuffle he's creating. And therein lies one of the downsides of generative AI, if I'm going to talk about that, is that we still need a human intervention to understand the nuance of the mood and some of the intangibles so that we can make the right choice and decisions. So I'm not all on the bus. I think humans can sort of moderate some of what is there, but it's amazing some of what that technology can do. All right. Key is we've got to set ambitious expectations that will drive. I've got Oscar Piastri, who won the Chinese Grand Prix on Sunday. That drove this picture. Well done, Oscar. And for all of you across the ditch, well done, Liam, as well. Race car drivers, by their very nature, are ambitious. And in our disruptive landscape, incremental goals are obsolete now. Nobody wants to be ordinary or average. We want our society and everyone to be extraordinary. The employee experience is now mandatory in personalisation, so people can be recognised for being ambitious. And to perpetuate this, organisations really need to motivate their teams to aim for audacious expectations that push limits. Last November, we got together 20 senior leaders in an organisation, and that was senior leaders. There were 10 executives above them. So we got together the 20-odd senior leaders in the organisation. Now, that organisation was struggling to make the numbers, like a number of organisations in the last 6 months of last year. Times were really, really tough. So these 20 were charged with coming up with ideas to either increase revenue or to reduce costs. And it was actually amazing. We used a hackathon format, 28 ideas, 7 project teams going forward. And over 5 months, which has now been completed because that was November last year. So the projects, a number of them have already been implemented. There was one full project reduced costs by over 300,000, just like that. And one full revenue project increased revenue by about 100-fold on one specific SKU. These were ambitious targets that these senior leaders were allowed to aim for to drive accountability. They crafted their own project teams and they just went ahead and implemented. Now, interesting, the CEO was absolutely stunned and surprised that this had been able to happen and that the executive team had not thought of the idea. If we talked to some of those executives, a number of them said, oh, yeah, we knew that. But they didn't do anything about it. So when we actually empower others to do that in an organisation, then we're able to set audacious targets and ambitious expectations that do drive innovation in organisations. A culture of courage. Courage is honestly something that should be in every single leadership development program. We're too nice. and nice, not just to one another. We're too nice and perhaps a little bit insecure of jumping forward or not confident enough to jump forward. Leaders have to foster this environment where individuals are encouraged to challenge convention, feel safe to take risks, make decisions, admit mistakes without fear of repercussions. The exact opposite of some accountability cultures, which are blame, 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 blame. Cultivating fearless courage empowers employees to take ownership, speak up, contribute their perspectives, and drive innovation. It encourages open communication, good active listening, regular feedback. It improves trust and transparency. And where people in teams feel trusted, they're more likely to take ownership for their work and be accountable for their own actions or that of the team. Our Gen Ys and Z actually have got courage. They've been speaking up since they were at school. That is encouraged in schools. Then they join the workforce and they've been told to be quiet. What a mixed message we've given our Ys and Zs. The critical difference between the school years and the workforce is psychological safety. At school, they felt psychologically safe to be independent and sometimes out of the box in their thinking and to speak up in a comfortable environment. Our workplaces don't have that psych safety. Organisations, we absolutely need to create it. Otherwise, we're going to just stifle innovation. Okay. Tip 4, if I can move the slide. Break free from the hierarchy. Let's get some collaboration and cross-functional pollination of ideas going. We have to also encourage here diversity. I know they talk about the gender pay gap and diversity targets. We've just got to embrace this much more. The more diversity of thought, the better the robust conversations and the better we can challenge each other's perspectives. That disruptive synergy will ignite also, it ignites ownership amongst people. And so therefore with ownership, they're much more likely to be accountable and fuel transformation because they want to be, they're part of the conversation. We have to create platforms for people to exchange ideas and learn from one another. It was amazing in this, the 20 leaders that I spoke about earlier, it was 20 senior leaders from across the organisation who were able to select which project idea of the 7 ones going forward, which they wanted to join. And there was huge cross-functional collaboration. You had some sales, you had marketing, you had some operations, you had technical support, IT. They all mixed in together and were able to solve some of these dilemmas. In a hybrid workforce, it's even more important to create these dynamics and encourage collaboration. Because where people are working from home 2-3 days a week and they don't necessarily have office time together, we're not going to get some of those corridor conversations and some of that transfer of knowledge. So we actually, as organisations, have to be really deliberate about creating these kind of environments. And finally, let's reward and recognise. There's Oscar again. Can you tell I'm proud? It's crucial to celebrate success. We've got to recognise and reward individuals who challenge the norms, who drive the innovation, who demonstrate ownership and accountability for either them or perhaps their teams. We've got to celebrate and foster this culture. They are also role models. If we recognise people who are standing out, who are our mavericks, and we recognise them, become role models for everyone else. So we have to acknowledge and appreciate these individuals who consistently demonstrate accountability by meeting and exceeding deadlines, taking initiative, and delivering really high quality work. And recognising their accountability and ownership sends a powerful message that is valued in our organisation, rather than some organisations which will stifle that creativity because they're out of the box or they're not conforming to our standards. So in this changing world, if you've got any questions, by all means ask them. In these changing worlds where we've got a whole lot of these things converging on us at the same time, in less than the next 5 years, we're going to have to embrace all of them. And we're going to have to start shifting to career development champions and developing people and empowering them and allowing them to come up with innovative ideas. And accountability then needs to be less push from leaders down and more pull. Now, can this happen in a government and a public sector context? Yes. But I will preface that by saying, is the leadership in those environments ready to embrace that change? I have seen in some government context pockets of some of the more fluid skill-based organisation structures and skill-based environments, and it's quite possible to do. The big, I guess, proviso is that the senior leadership is usually not psychologically safe themselves, and so therefore they're not necessarily going to encourage it. So I think it is a bit more difficult in some of those compliance-driven organisations, but it's possible in pockets. So accountability, less push from leader down, more pull in terms of the coaching style of leader. And we've got to encourage those mavericks. We've got to reward them and recognise them. And we've got to allow them to come up with some creative ideas that they go through. Our next webinar, which is on the 21st of May, is It's Time to Ditch the 9-Box Grid. And Karen has just popped a link into the chat bar. So if you want to register now, by all means, just click on that and register. Now, the reason why we looked at the 9-Box Grid is last year we did a webinar on talent and succession planning, and we got a feedback questions that were asking us about what's happening with the 9-Box Grid. Do we still have to use it? Are there any new things? So I did some research, and actually I think it's time to ditch it because it is well over 50 years old. Yes. Do we have leadership training on pull? Yes, Sonia, we do. It is very much in terms of that coaching style. And yes, we do. Happy to get in touch afterwards. And read Push and Pull. You say that teams should become more accountable, but what if they're not? How do we get them to change and change fast? Who should be leading this and be the catalyst for the individuals? It is a coaching style of leader. I can give you a brilliant example in that we work with a hotel chain and they've got loads of hotels around the world. I'll just take the Middle East as an example. There are 14 hotels in that particular chain in that Middle East. There were 2 hotels in there that adopted a coaching style. It was a coaching program that was going over the whole organisation. But there was 2 hotels that actually adopted it because they had a role model from their general manager all the way down in the organisations. Both hotels were able to deliver substantial productivity and performance improvements as a result of that coaching style. So from pull to push, or it's push to pull, shift. Yes, you can. You can change and change fast when you adopt a full coaching style across leadership of the whole organisation. Now, that's not an easy thing to do. It's not 1 hour. It's not 2 hours. It's a substantial culture program to shift to a coaching style of leadership. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I know I'm on time. And if there is a survey that Karen's just put up, please tell us if you found this valuable and what other topics that you're interested in that we can talk about over the following year that we go through. We got white papers, all sorts of things that can help in terms of information. And I really look forward to seeing you all at our next The 9-Box Grid is Dead in May. So see you, everyone.